There are an awful lot of names in that reading, complexified by the fact that we then get translations of lots of the different names, which is interesting because the Bible doesn't generally go through translating every single word it gives us. There's an importance here on getting the names right. I don't know how many you counted, but the most obvious ones: Lamb of God, Son of God, Rabbi, Messiah, which is the same in a different language as the Christ, John, Andrew, Simon, Cephas, which means Peter. And then there are people who are described by what they do as well. We don't know the names of the two of John's disciples who followed Jesus in this episode, but we do know that two people are identified as John's disciples. Names and titles are really important in our lives and in who we are. Some of them speak of our relationship. We've got people here described as brothers. We've got people described as disciples. I could describe myself as a daughter, a sister, a mother, an aunt, a cousin, a niece, a friend. A lot of the names that we give ourselves and that other people give us describe the relationships that we've got with them. Some of the names that we have describe a role that we hold in a community, either a job title or something that we're known for being good at, a role that we're expected to play. I'm a vicar, might be a warden, or a local missional leader. Someone might be known as a teacher or a healer, or a storyteller, or a feeder. Anyone got a feeder in their life? Or a listener. You might say that someone's a really good listener, and that's the role that they play in the community that you're in. And then there's our actual names, the names in our passport, the names on our birth certificate, the names on the letters that we receive. And there are the ones that we're given, and there are ones that we maybe give ourselves later in life. Our given names can hold all sorts of meanings. There are all those books of baby names, aren't there, that give you all the lovely meanings of different names, and you might choose a name for your child based on these wonderful attributes that you expect it to have. My parents named me Miranda, which means worthy of admiration. You try living up to that. But our given names can hold difficult memories for us as well. They might speak of the hopes and aspirations that our parents had for us. But if you're a really clumsy person, all arms and legs, and your parents named you Grace, that can be really difficult to live up to. And they can also hold difficult and painful memories of a person that we no longer identify with, or of a family that didn't live up to the dreams that we have of family. Some of us have chosen new names, as Jesus renamed Peter, because we feel that those names say more about us and what we aspire to be than our given names ever could. And then the other category of names, I think, are the names that other people call us to describe us, the labels. Cruel labels, harsh labels. I'm struggling a bit today with my new varifocals, and it reminds me that I used to be called Specky or Four Eyes quite a lot. But also, even those labels that people give us that are meant to be affirming, meant to be positive, can be very limiting. If you've been part of a family with more than one sibling, you might be able to identify who in your family was labelled the good one, the clever one, the naughty one, the lazy one. And those labels can be really damaging. They can be really self-fulfilling, and we can find ourselves trying to live up to them or live down to them, even when we know that's not a good idea. They box us into a corner. Even the positive ones, the clever one, the good one, can make it really difficult to be yourself, because you find yourself having or feeling that you have to live up to that name that people are giving you. And so it seems to me that this story of the calling of these first disciples shows a group of people throwing off the shackles of being defined by the names they were given by their families and their communities. John's disciples who we only know as John's disciples, stop being John's disciples and go and become Jesus' disciples instead. That was probably quite a big decision. John was the mega celebrity of his day. He was the famous American hate preacher here, if you like. It wasn't, well, some people would have thought he was a hate preacher. But, he was someone with a massive celebrity following, the Instagram hero of the day. And being labelled as one of John's disciples was quite something. It gave you a status. And to choose to give that up and go and follow somebody else would have led to quite a lot of mockery, perhaps, and a real sense of loss of identity and status. Most obviously, of course, Simon is renamed Peter. We're told Cephas means Peter. That's not hugely helpful. Translating it into our language, it means rock. You are the rock on which I will build the church, we hear later. It's a name full of future promise. And it's the result, notice, of Jesus looking at Simon. He looks at him and he says, I'm going to call you rock. He names something in him that he sees, future potential, which nobody up to that point has seen. And he gives him a new name because his new identity and destiny is so important, it needs a new name. Not who society has up till now defined him as. He was probably, given what we later see of him in the Gospels, he was probably the naughty one, the unreliable one, the impetuous one. And here's Jesus saying, you're a rock. And the other person who doesn't get defined by what he's called in here is Jesus himself. Up till now, Jesus has been that carpenter's son from Nazareth. And as we hear in other places, nothing good ever comes out of Nazareth. Nazareth? That one from Nazareth? Nobody expects that to be a good thing. Elsewhere you hear people say, who does he think he is? He's just that carpenter's son. Isn't that John's cousin? Isn't that Joseph's kid? These are all the labels that Jesus has had up to this point. He's not been anyone special. And suddenly, John points at him and says, that is the Lamb of God. He's the Messiah. He's the anointed one. And directs his disciples to go and have a look and see what's going on there instead of here. So this passage shows us three different ways that we can defy the identities that other people put on us. Three ways of claiming and embracing a new identity and a new destiny. Others, as John did with Jesus, can testify to what they see God doing in us. Often we can't see ourselves what we're good at or what God's doing in us, but other people can say, do you know what? You are a really good listener. You are a really reliable friend. You're really kind, or whatever. And other people taking the trouble to name what they see God doing in us can be hugely powerful and affirming and can help free us from the destinies that we feel trapped in. Second way that we can begin to claim new identities is making choices ourselves, as John's disciples did, to follow Jesus. They're not quite sure what's going on. They're not quite sure who this person is. They don't know much about him. But they choose to go and follow after him. And when he turns around and asks them what they want, they go, where are you staying? We want to know more about you. And they choose and they go and spend time with him. We can make choices as to who and what we spend time with, where we put our energies, where we put our time. If we choose to spend that time with God, it will change who we are. And thirdly, of course, like Simon or Peter, as we more popularly know him now, we can allow God to look deeply into our eyes and name what she sees there. We can allow ourselves to be looked at by God and to hear God say that we are God's beloved, made and created for love, made and created and named as beloved, as chosen, and as trusted ones. God sees us as we are and sees our potential And as we look to Jesus and spend more time with him, we also can have our eyes open to our potential and our future and our true, real selves, unconstrained by what society says about us. Amen.